beginning. Okay, so people are gonna come on in. I'm gonna set it to, yeah, I'll send that to you. I'm gonna set it to go live in just a moment here. We'll be starting. All right, everybody, we're gonna get going. Oh, yeah. All right, let's see here. I think we're live. All right, find us on Facebook and see what happens. Okay, so we are starting our honorary Women's History Month candid conversation about systemic racism. Misha Safran here with my lovely partner Jody, and we are just checking in. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. We're going to make sure that we've got everybody who's registered who can get in. Got a few more people coming in. So let me just approve those folks and they'll be able to jump into the show here, the event. All right. I want to first just welcome everyone and thank you for being here, and congratulations for being here. Being that this is Women's History Month, I wanted to start with sharing my screen and saying the names of Black women who have lost their lives, people of color who have lost their lives since 2014. And I'm doing this because we are honoring women this month. This is not a fun thing to be doing. This is a very uncomfortable thing. And you know what? Sometimes we just have to be uncomfortable. So if you can see from this chart, for every one man that we are honoring here and remembering, there are two women. And we don't often hear about these women. So this is from 2014 to 2020.
And a key point here is that these are women that were murdered, and that there is a complete erasure of Black African American history and individuals that have been murdered, and it's particularly so for women. So this is why it's important to hear and their names and for all of us to honor them.
Yeah. So before I do this, just those of you who are watching on Facebook, welcome. Please let us know that you're here and where you're listening from. Those of you who are attendees of the webinar, also, please feel free to say hello in the chat and the comments there and let us know how you heard about the webinar. And we'll tell you more in just a moment, but I'm going to say their names, these women, and then ask for a moment of silence. Tanisha Anderson, Natasha McKenna, Maya Hall, Alexia Christian, Joyce Cornell, Ralkina Jones, sorry, India Kager, Keisha Michael, Corinne Gaines, Deborah Danner, Michelle Shirley, Charlena Lyles, DeCynthia Clements, Pamela Turner, Tatiana Jefferson, Brianna Taylor. And if you'll join me in a moment of silence for these women and others. Thank you. So, for those of you who are in attendance, we're going to be handing the microphone over in a little while, very short while, to our beautiful guests and friends, Michelle Hayes, Nell Myhand, and Gloria Motley. But first, we're going to just give you a little background and create the safe space that we've been creating for 2 years that we want to continue having for our guests being our panelists. First I have to say, oh my goodness, all land is Indigenous land. We value here accept and welcome all races, genders, cultures, abilities, and sexual orientations. This webinar is a place of love, not hate, of acceptance, not negating or dismissing. So we just want all to feel welcome. And this is where we have the opportunity to truly share as the panelists who they are, where they come from, and what their heart feels like saying. Nothing more, but it could be less because that's up to them. So.
And, Misha created this webinar and asked me to join her, and I'm so honored that she did. And the webinar was created to engage in honest and authentic conversations about the long-time injustice of racism in America. During the webinars, we discussed systemic racism in an effort to dismantle white supremacy from the inside out. Our intention with these webinars is to participate in sustainable action and highlight the voices of Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color community members, giving them a safe space to be heard about their own experiences, challenges, and hopes without the need to educate white people.
Yeah, that's that. And what's really important to know is we have shared with our panelists that they do not have to share anything they don't want to share. And so that's a really important piece for me, because I don't want you to feel any pressure. So Michelle, Nell, and Gloria, when it's your turn, it is your turn to do with it as you wish. And we want to honor your experiences as women of color. Yeah. So just a little background. My name is Misha Safran, and I was an educator for 30 years, middle school, high school, and community college. I have a master's in French literature. I speak French, Spanish, and English. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I'm an anti-racist. I am a quirky, queer, crazy, beautiful woman inside and out. And I am really delighted to have these women here in particular, because we met through the Belong Circle, the Poor People's Campaign, and Faith in Action East Bay, which is has a real beautiful place in my heart, because my father actually worked for the Poor People's Campaign back in 1960s, 67. And we're all here together this last week reading from Martin Luther King's speech, breaking the silence around the Vietnam War. And I'm delighted to be an activist and to be able to make connections and friendships like we are making, and bridging the gap and building a bridge of love. So that's why I'm here. And who are you?
Thank you. My name's Jody Lewis. I am an attorney and have worked most of my legal career in nonprofit field representing survivors of domestic and sexual violence. And there is an intersection between sexual violence and domestic violence and racism and race. I also have authored articles, working on a variety of projects. One of my main reasons that I'm here and need to be here and want to be here is because I have been a part of systemic racism by being complacent, by not recognizing how my privilege has hurt others. And I have at times done things that have been racist based on our white supremacist society. And it's not, I'm here because I need to keep speaking about it. We need to keep speaking about it to break the silence, to stand with our sisters, to stand with our brothers, to stand with all races, because it's so important. We can't keep living the way we've been living. And I'm so honored to have Michelle, Nell, and Gloria here. I haven't known them long, but even in the brief time that I met them, they have made an impact on me.
Thank you. And so we're going to introduce our guests. So we have Michelle Hayes, Nell Myhand, and Gloria Motley. And it didn't change. There it is. Okay. So Michelle Hayes is a Belong Circle facilitator with Faith in Action East Bay. She is active with the Bay Area Poor People's Campaign, a mother of 3 and a Mimi of 7. She uses she, her pronouns and resides in Richmond, California on Ohlone land. Michelle loves people and believes the world would be a better place if we come together and have intimate conversations. And she says we are more alike than we think. Nell Myhand is an Oakland-based organizer. She is a member of the Bay Area Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, regional steering committee, and serves as a quad chair of the California PPC, working locally and nationally to amplify the voices of low, no wealth people and their demands for resources to meet our basic needs for housing, education, healthcare, and a livable climate. Nell also organizes with women of color in the Global Women's Strike, an international organization calling on all governments to recognize unwaged caregiving as work deserving of a wage and pay them. Gloria
Motley was born in Nebraska, lived a short time in Oklahoma, and moved to Southern California as a child. There is where she primarily grew up and lived until 1982. Gloria sees herself as a retired caretaker versus a recovering caretaker. This was a powerful, life-affirming, and important decision for her life, since she had always put others people's needs first. As hard as it was to see, she came to realize putting others first was also a pattern of self-sacrifice and a part of racism. With the continued killing of Black people and the having to deal with a virus, unlike some, she experienced COVID-19 as an opportunity to care for herself even more, to self-reflect more deeply, while fearfully dealing with the pain of racism, ageism, sexism, and the various inequities in society, living alone as a Black woman.
So welcome, dear friends, our beautiful friends. You, dear women, you get to take the mic. And there are several questions that we've asked kind of as themes throughout the last 2 years. You can take one of those or you can come up with your own. Like, this is for you to speak where you are. Some of the questions have been, what has your upbringing been like? Have you had to personally face racism? Have you had experiences of racism? How has your family, your friend circle been affected by systemic racism? Any of that or anything else. Who are you and where is your heart and how do you serve and what do you see in the world? Do you have hope that we're, making a difference? I know it feels like sometimes we've gone backwards a lot, and it feels sometimes that there's still so far to go, but so all of that can be anything that you share, or anything else. But we hand over the mic to you. Just take turns, be nice. I'm just kidding. And we'll turn off our mic until you say, talk to us. The floor is yours. Muted, Michelle.
There you go. Oops.
I guess I'll start a little bit because before I go to crying, because I'm just blown away at how the start with the belongs, circle has expanded hugely, and seeing how doing that and other things have taken me to a whole nother level that I never expected. But at any rate, as far as racism through my life, I would say, I guess my mother allowed us to play with everybody, that you could, because we're being brought up in San Francisco at that time, you didn't really see the real, you would feel the real racism like down south. Being, San Francisco born and raised in Northern California, you didn't see those type of things right in front of your face. But I used to have a white girlfriend. I was maybe 11 or 12, and we would take turns playing at each other's house. So one day I went to her house, and her father or mother, somebody pretty much sent me away and told her, don't bring any niggas, to our house. I'm sure she probably was dumbfounded too, like, what is it? Because that's what I was walking and confused, and finally I went home and I told my mother about the situation, and she said, well, that term nigga doesn't mean necessarily a black person. Niggas come in all shades. And, you know, that's still kind of like, okay. It's still like, I'm still dumbfounded. So why? Then later on, little things here and there, you realize, as I got older, I still had all races of friends and stuff, but as I got older, you just see how the system works differently, you know, for you. My mother was on welfare and, single parent. And so she did the best she could. But I just remember at that time social services was coming to the house, looking in closets, making sure you didn't have a man, all kind of crazy stuff. But it was, a lot of secrets that that you didn't really understand until you get older. And so I remember as I'm going to school or as I getting older, getting ready to graduate from high school, my mother would say, you better stay in school, you better get your degree, because that's one thing they can't take away from you. You'll have your education, your mind is something that they can't take. And of course, you mean the white man. That's what, they meant, means, at that time. So, I was always striving, to do the best I can. You got to do twice as better than the white man or whatever. You have to do twice as, so, that was just something instilled in your mind and you're not asking questions of, you know, well, why? You're not asking questions, you're just doing what you're told. And then as I have degrees, I have, I have my BA, I have my master's, but I was still poor. Okay. And, making it, but I always believe that we are all one paycheck away from being homeless, you know. Anyway, during that time of going to college, getting degrees and all of that, by then I had my oldest son and I was working at the phone company and I did not want to be in management. But mind you, they knew that I came in there with my BA. Okay. They knew I had a Bachelor of Art. But had I been a white woman who came in there with her BA, they might have put me in on a different path. So I just had this, I was a administrative, so that's what I knew. And therefore, I didn't go into the management. And then I was like, saying to myself, how you trying to be okay with it. Well, I don't want to be a manager anyway, because I want to be able to just help my husband and take care of my kids. Most of those managers, they work 24/7. I don't want to do that, but you're making excuses or whatever. Because they also at that time, if you were a certain weight, you wouldn't get a job at the phone company. If you're overweight, and that was against the law. So eventually, it was done. But at any rate, I'm just saying that to say that you start noticing those systemic, things that are happening. And when I was working as a staff associate, I would be doing most of the work for the managers anyway. I was making sure the letters were right, and also they would go on vacations and in the summer or whatever and come back and put their hand up against mine to say, "Oh, I'm almost your color." You know, little stuff, you know. And you know, but in response I said, "Well, this is my color all the time."
Right.
So, you know, but anyway, you know, you get all that little stuff. But anyway, the long story short is that education is wonderful. Having a good job is wonderful. But if your health fails, what happens? And all the money that you might have put into Social Security or whatever, you're barely surviving. Barely surviving. So that's what I'm gonna say for now.
Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Gloria, go ahead, Gloria.
I can relate to what Michelle was saying. In thinking about this webinar, I started to think about my experiences with racism. And I think my first experience that I recall, I was about 5. When we were in Oklahoma, and we lived in these duplexes, and there was railroad tracks, but you know, we played, the kids played. But my mother, and I think it was my cousin, or maybe my aunt, we were coming from the circus or something. And so we had to walk a long ways, and then this pickup truck passed by. And I mean, I'm only 5 years old, but then it turns around and comes back. And then all of a sudden, when it went in another direction, my mother and my aunt started running. And I had no idea at the time, but there were white men in that truck. And they were 2 women with a little girl. And so we made it home, but they were scared. And I was scared because I didn't know what was going on. I mean, my feet were like flying in the air because I was so little. And I remember when that was in Oklahoma. And then when we moved to California, one of the houses we lived, there was a little girl that lived across the alleyway. It was like an alley between our properties. And I'd go over and play with her. She was a little white girl, but I could never go into her house. There was a little, sort of like a little sun deck or something with her little table and stuff. And so we'd play until it was time for me to go home. But when my cousins came, it was also painful because a couple of them kept saying, "You talk funny. You talk like a white girl." So I was like, okay. So as I got older and I was in the 3rd grade, because we sort of moved around a lot. And I think I was in the 3rd grade and I was leaving school, and this white boy, he was about in the 5th or 6th grade. He just hauled off and slapped me. And I was in shock because it's like, I didn't know him. He, you know, it's like, well, what did I do? And then luckily there was a teacher or someone who saw it and took us into the office. And every day he had to go to the office so that I could get home. And he hit me so hard, he left like an impression of his hand on my face. And I was only, I mean, what are you in this, you know, 3rd grade? And then, not the last thing, but okay, so I moved from Southern California to Santa Cruz to go to school. And they had a transit bus that goes all, you know, buses, and they have like a central location where they downtown. And I'm on the bus, and there was this white woman sitting across from me. And before she got off the bus, I think she had some mental problems or something. But anyway, she looked at me and she said, "Thanks for being Black, because I don't think I could be Black." So I'm sitting there shocked, like, well, did she just insult me? Exactly what was she, what does she mean? You know, and I would be very frightened for a young Black teenager, especially the boys, because how they were viewed versus another group. And at the time, I didn't know it, but Santa Cruz was fairly predominantly white, but all their officers and stuff were white. I mean, there were people of color in the city, but none of the police officers or anyone like that until later, you know. So this has been, this has been good, I think. I'm gonna have to get off the screen for a second so I can get some tissue. Yeah, I didn't grow up thinking about white people. I was in a, predominantly Black neighborhood, but it was mixed too. And it was just growing up and listening to my grandfather, who lived to be 100. And I used to say, Grandpa, what was it like growing up? And, and one of the stories he told me, and I wrote it down, I would always write stuff that he would, tell me. And he was telling me, he says, well, one night his father came home and said, we got to go, we got to go. This is in Oklahoma, I think. And they ran out into the woods, he said. And then he could hear horses and he could hear guns. And then they were they burnt the house down. They didn't realize they weren't in there. But that's how they had to get away, and that was heartbreaking for me. And like I said in my intro, it's like putting the pieces together, like realizing that you have to show your worth by your productivity was something I had to overcome in one of my last jobs. Because, it's like physically I could show stuff, but when I started using my head and using the computer and stuff, and I had to talk it over with my boss, and she understood. So I've had some pretty good people all around. So I'm gonna stop. I'm going to go wash my face and I'll be back.
Thank you so much, Gloria.
Thank you.
So I know that it's a problem when you're doing a broadcast to have silence.
We're allowed to have silence here.
I want to let Ms. Motley return and just sit with what she said.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Nell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oops, we didn't hear you.
I said thank you for waiting because I didn't want to miss Nell's.
Well, we're honoring your share also with silence. And I guess even Nell, before you go on, I want to acknowledge, both Michelle and Nell shared, both Michelle and Gloria shared about that childhood friend and being, kicked out, dismissed in a way because of the color of your skin. And I just want to, something like that happening as a little child, where you don't even understand like what could possibly be wrong with me. It's just yeah, I'm just sending you lots of love, because that's a horrible beginning to childhood. And
Mhm.
appreciate your vulnerability and willing to share those experiences with us.
Mhm. Thank you so much. The stories are very important, because we can look at statistics and they tell an important story as well. Here in California, the 5th largest economy in the world, slightly smaller than the UK, slightly larger than Germany. 51% of people in California live at or near poverty. And it would be bad enough if all the groups were equally impoverished, right? That's not the world we're looking for. It's like, that's not it. And 71% of people in California who are living at or near poverty are Latinx. 61% are Black. And so it just, we know that it disproportionately impacts us. So memories that came up for me. Well, before I do that, I want to say that I heard not only about, I heard several things in the stories that you, Ms. Motley, and you, Michelle, told. I heard school mentioned, right, in institutions, that it's not only what happens between us as individuals, it's that it's institutionalized. If you just had to deal with somebody's parent kicking you out because they didn't want you to be friends, there's plenty of people in the world to be friends with. But that's not in fact the case. So I was trying to count up workplace, school, family relationships, neighborhood, like different, just in the telling of these stories. And so one memory that came up for me, to Michelle's point about, you have to be not just good, right? Not even just excellent. I don't even know if there's a word that describes what we have to be, right? Except tired. We have to be tired, I guess, because we have to do, everybody has to do some work to survive. You have to, take care of your body. The labor of childcare teaches us that we have a body and that it takes work to take care of it. So everybody has that level of work. Everybody has to make a living somehow, right? And then on top of that, we have the work to do to untie the knot of stereotypes so we can get in. And we have to deal with the violence of racism. On the spectrum, racism is on a spectrum and violence is on a spectrum, but it starts with things like the N-word, or, look at my tan. And it doesn't stop until it gets to that list that you started the session with. So we also have to deal with that. And then we have to have the talk, right? So the work that Michelle, Ms. Motley, I don't know if you're a parent, right? So that work that every time your young person goes out the door, right? Let them come home safe, Not because they're drunk drivers, everybody is exposed to the risk of drunk driving, right? So it's work over and above, on top of. So I think you get the picture. So the memory that came up was that when I went to kindergarten, I knew how to read, right? Because my mother, she knew that what Michelle just said, that if I didn't know how to read when I got to kindergarten, I might not learn how to read, right? So she made sure that I was ready. So when I got there, they put me in the class with people who did not know how to read because they made an assumption about who I was based on how I looked. So the strange thing about it is that it didn't take Miss Criddle, right? You know, it's like teachers are really, really powerful. So it didn't take Miss Criddle very long to realize, yeah, actually, I think she can go to the other class, right? And so, of course, I felt really proud because I knew how to read, right? But what I didn't get, because I was only, 5 or whatever, and so what I didn't get is that that scenario would repeat itself 1 trillion times in my lifetime. So it changed, so it changes that experience of feeling like an accomplishment. You've accomplished something into something that you feel like you have to turn it into a hammer to be able to tear down the wall to get in, and so it just raises and distorts. It's a distortion of who we are. And what I want to say before I stop is that it doesn't only distort Black people or brown people, Asian, Filipino. It does not only distort people of color who are the targets. So, Ms. Motley, when that woman said to you, "I'm so glad it's not me," right? I don't know exactly what it was that she said, but it was something like that. Like, it's better that I not have that burden because I'm not sure I can make it. So I think it was a sideways compliment, like an appreciation for what it means to be a Black woman, by acknowledging that if she had that to bear, she's not sure what she would do. That's how I heard it.
Thank you, Nell, because I kind of sat there for a while and was thinking, it's like, what did she mean?
Mm-hmm.
And she just wobbled off and kept laughing, but it's like those things just come at you out of the blue. And yeah, just out of the blue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I want to tell a story about my family, how my family, had a strategy, because we're here. So obviously, okay, we figured something out. So my parents left the South, the Great Migration, that wave of Black people who were like, no, we're not doing this. So they left the South. They went to Warren, Ohio, this little town in Northeast Ohio, where my father's maternal uncle lived. So he followed his family. My mother followed him. When she got there, she went to a department store. Actually, she had this history in her hometown of a white Jewish man employing her father, right? That alliance, that Black and Jewish alliance that has been a real thing for a long time in this country. So that was her experience from Humboldt, Tennessee. When she got to Warren, she went to the department store in downtown Warren and got hired to run the elevator. Well, it was a big deal because white people did not get in elevators with Black people, right? It's not, rational. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I can cook your food and I can take care of your kids, right? And I can even take care of you when you can't take care of yourself. But we cannot be in an elevator together, right? So that's the distortion, right? It's like, that's distorted thinking. So he hired her to run the elevator, the first Black woman who had ever been hired to run the elevator. So she got my father a job in that department store. Mr. Rosenblum hired her. She got him a job. She got her a job. She got him a job. Okay. And then she went to Packard Electric, General Motors, and got a job in a factory, a union job. Then she got him a job at Packard, union job. Okay. She was like, we're going to have a family. We're going to have a home. We're going to raise these kids. Okay. You ready? Okay, let's go. And he was like, okay, just, tell me what to do. And I'm there. He was like a very quiet, soft-spoken, kind of, very gentle man. And so that is how we got to start, was that she was just like, she's just going to figure out a way out of no way, and did. And so then when I turned 16, Mr. Rosenblum hired me for my first job. Okay, she was like, I got a connection. He understands my situation. Okay, come on. And for sure, I worked at that job before I went to college and after I came back. Okay. So, that's the thing, is that, it's this awful thing that happens to us. And it's like, but life is like not really trying to hear that, I can't bring all of who I am and, be who I am. It's like, I don't belong. I don't belong, Michelle.
We got to get more of us at the table where the decisions are made. They need to hear
Yes.
from everybody.
Mhm. Thank you, Nell.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Breathing into the
Mhm.
distortion. It just blows my mind. It's something I've thought about and talked about before, but yeah, I mean, you could cook their food and put all sorts of stuff in it if you really wanted to, right? You take care of them, you're giving them their meds. Could give the wrong one if you wanted to.
Come on, people,
Not get in an elevator with them. What the?
Right,
It's very distorted. Very
right,
distorted.
right.
Yes. But I am kind of hopeful. I'm still hopeful because I see so much, just even thinking about the belong circle and all of this, that was like, wow.
Mhm.
And to find out what people are involved with already.
Mhm.
Now we have extended that table.
Mhm.
We have now resources, people that know who we are,
Mhm.
and we are getting to know who they are. We got a domestic violence lawyer over there. I might need you. I might need
Okay.
you for real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we got a counselor,
Mhm.
for these brain, we go through a lot,
Mhm.
and the biggest part to me is that
Michelle, it's a little hard to see your face. Yeah.
I
There
know
you
Okay. Okay.
I got this in my lap,
Uh-huh.
but the biggest thing, to me is that, just like I said, people not even wanting to get to know someone else who's different than them,
Mhm.
and just like you said, the morals, what's going on in your heart,
Mhm.
to have that much hate for somebody. And you don't even know them. How you hating me? And you don't even know me.
Mhm.
Gloria, you probably hear my voice down at down.
I do sometimes.
Love that.
I'm over here in the apartment down the
Mhm.
hall from from Gloria.
Mhm.
Oh,
And
nice.
yes, and yeah, that's my sister friend too. so we take care of each other. But at any rate, my apartment is supposed to be for people who are hard of hearing. So I'm right at the end. I can get as loud as I want to, but sorry, Gloria.
Just teasing.
But yeah. But anyway, yeah, and sometimes, I y'all know how many meetings I go to, and how some things seem, it makes so much sense. What is the problem? Because you don't have that problem, and you are getting paid to take care of that problem. Just like transportation. I'm working with the Commission on Aging, trying to get better transportation for seniors.
Yeah.
And we have all these different agencies that are not talking to each other, and it just, it's just an octopus of just craziness. And all this money that we're supposed to be getting from Measure X or whatever, it's like, what they do, they have another group that they're going to form to do a study on, and they have, and then the money's not spent where it needs to be. Find a way, have transfers or whatever, so that people can get from A to Z without spending the whole day trying to get there. Anyway, that's one thing.
It's very important, because that's a basic need. Transportation is a basic need. Everybody has to figure out how to move from one point to another, right? So the fact that some people don't have access to a basic need is a big deal. Because they have access to, a lot of things that are not basic needs. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, and there's been a history of this country, local governments, federal governments, not providing transportation for communities that are low income, for communities that are minority communities, because whites say, oh, I don't want the line to come through my neighborhood. Crime might increase or whatever it is. So, I mean, there's a lot of research out there, and we'll put resources in for people.
And then closing polling offices that are within walking distance and making people walk 5 miles or even several miles or longer.
Or putting, saying that during COVID, polling centers would not be at senior centers, but then in certain communities, putting them in public housing neighborhoods where it directly affected minorities and low-income individuals. So our the policies that our government has put in place has just was racist to begin with, and systemic racism, and has perpetuated in so many ways. And what has happened is that they just keep coming up with new ways to do it. And that's why, I agree. I think every webinar we've had, I've been so impressed with all the panelists still having hope. And a lot of times speaking to exactly what Michelle talked about, get to know people. Let's come sit down at the table so you actually know who someone is before you jump to these conclusions, before you follow the stereotypes that are just based on falsehoods and not on reality, and what Nell was talking about, those distortions that have happened. And let's see people who they are and work together to make changes and stop the systemic racism.
Nell, would you be willing to tell us about the work that you do with the Poor People's Campaign? And I want also, just for people who are listening, I'm putting it in the chat and the comments both on Facebook and in here. There are 3 entities for people to donate to this month. We've got the California Poor People's Campaign. We also have the Live Free USA, which Michelle will talk about in a little bit. And then we also have the Faith in Action, which everyone can talk about as well. So I'm just putting those in the chat. But yeah, we're working on a really beautiful project that was kind of spearheaded by the California Poor People's Campaign, and would love folks to know of how to find you, how to do work with the Poor People's Campaign, also how to join a Belong Circle. It'd be great to let people, because maybe there are people here that are listening and watching that have never been to any of these organizations, and I know that through the Poor People's Campaign, my father got to shake the hands of Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King. So I'm very excited to hear more and offer people a way to support the organization.
So let's see. So the Poor People's Campaign, as Misha has mentioned, called by Dr. King in 1967 at the insistence of Johnny Tillman, who was one of the founders of the National Welfare Rights Union, right back to, this work of raising all of the bricklayers, all of the carpenters, all of the bakers, all. And you're telling us that it's not working, it's not worth anything? Okay, we got news for you. So Johnny Tillman in the National Welfare Rights Union and Marian Wright Edelman, she was Marian Wright at the time, and then she became Marian Wright Edelman. We know her as that now. Children's Defense Fund. She was doing that work then. And they were like one in one ear and one in the other. Dr. King, we need a Poor People's Campaign. Dr. King. And he was like,
Yes,
I
women,
hear you. Okay. Yeah, okay.
women.
Centering the leadership of these women who are closest to the problem, right? Imagine, they might have the most important, up-to-date, and accurate information. They might even have an idea what to do. Okay, I'm sorry. So he thought that's a good idea. Yeah. Organize. Let's get some poor people on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And I have a short video of him, going around and saying, yeah, we're going to have this, we're going to go to Washington and people are coming from everywhere. We are going to take care of you. There's going to be food there. We will have people who make sure that you have somewhere to stay, and there were people coming from the deepest poverty in the South, right? Where they did not have food and they did not have shoes and they had housing that, it was not decent housing. It was not, really housing. So sure enough, in 68, even though he had been assassinated, it had been set in motion. And if you can imagine what it took for you to stay grounded in the significance of the work while they're shooting at you.
Yeah.
That's a pretty clear message. Not that it was the first person, not that he was the first person who died, but it was like, the civil rights movement that had brought the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act had clearly impacted the lives of people in this country. We got some concessions out of the government. And so when he saw that the war on poverty was being defunded to fund the killing of Vietnamese people, he was like, after we have funded the French killing Vietnamese people. So in that speech, he clearly says, I have reached the point where I cannot remain silent. I cannot do it. If you think I can, then you don't know me. And 1 year after he was assassinated. So my beloved Belong Circle, heard the call that we're in a mobilization to Washington, D.C. for a mass assembly and a moral march on Washington. And so we have some things that we're doing to get the word out about that and invite people to participate in a variety of ways. And so one of the ways is that we're having these public readings, a day of public readings of Dr. King's Beyond Vietnam, A Time to Break Silence speech. So you want to talk, Michelle, about how that came to be and the vision and Like it took wings, and
Oh my goodness. Well, it started off with the Belong Circle, and the Belong Circle is where you get a group of people that you would not normally meet, together. And we have like a curriculum, and it's mostly exercises to get to know yourself and others. And so we had the curriculum, and we did our little 4 sessions. Um, and then at the last session, we decide whether we want to continue or, go our ways. So everybody's, oh, we gotta stay. We so then we started having meetings about what things, because basically the Faith in Action East Bay, we have these belong circles for organizing, basically, and see what other people are thinking about the way things are going in the world and what are their things that they are working on. Because a lot of people were already doing things, so that was wonderful. So anyway, we proposed to join the uh, mobilization with the California Poor People's Campaign, and that is for the day doing the speeches on April 4th. And in my Belong Circle, it was like, 7 people or something like that. And we asked each person if they had somebody to invite, to ask them if they would like to, read the speech. So at that next meeting, we had another meeting, and no, it was after we decided we were going to do it, we left away, with that in mind, and we divided the speech into 16 sections. But I think we ended up now having 18, right? Because we have an introduction. Yeah. So at any rate, we ended up with more than enough people. We ended up with 18 people actually doing every section of that needed to be done. And that's where we met Misha and Jody and well, I persuaded Gloria, and Nell was a part of the Belong Circle, and I think she invited somebody. So we ended up with all this wonderful stuff. So, and then we have these wonderful web people, the techies who are going to. So each section does a video of their section, and Misha and Jody usually will film them. And then when everything comes together, we have Linda, who's also in the Belong Circle, who is going to pull it together and add all the stuff about about the Poor People's Campaign, right? So all this happened with just, a call to action, basically, and everybody wanted a piece of it. So it was so exciting, and then and it's still going on. We were at my church today, and Nell did a presentation about the California Poor People's Campaign, and more connections, more contacts, and it's really getting large, and I'm excited. Next step is in Los Angeles, so just hoping people who want to be involved will go to the website, any of those websites really, because Faith in Action, we're mobilizing people to vote, and along with the Poor People's Campaign, so everything is connected, and I'm just excited.
Exciting time.
Yeah, it's been a beautiful experience. I mean, we've only attended a couple times because we're new to the group, but we were talking the other day about it's so nice to be in this group on Thursdays. It's every other Thursday, but people really care about each other. And, you know, it's not just about this project, it's about who everybody is. I mean, at the end of the call last week, you know, Peyton said, "Hey, Jody, how are you? What's going on with you? Tell me more about you." You know, and so if people haven't heard of Belong Circles, they really ought to check into Faith in Action East Bay and see how you can get one started. Yeah, we've met some beautiful people who you're all seeing right now. Look at these beautiful people.
Well, we met some beautiful people as well.
That's
So,
true.
Yeah.
so you guys,
We want to, you know, honor your time and make sure that we're not holding you here too long, because we did say it would be an hour. So, is there
well, I
anything
wanted to add
I
something
was going to
before
ask?
we go.
Yeah,
I'm just basically going to say that once you become a part of the team, there's no going back. So you guys might as well, you magnetized to the group now. So
yeah, yeah.
if you have any questions, you know where to come to.
Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
You know.
happily magnetized to the group.
Yeah.
Spoken like a true organizer. Okay, Michelle is an organizer.
Well, I don't know why anybody wouldn't want to. You know,
I know it's
it's
funny. Hmm.
you know, Cesar Chavez said, "You talk to one person who talks to one person who talks to one person. That's how you get change, right?"
It's true.
And here we're not just talking, and I know that's not what he meant. It's like connection. We're connecting. And I mean, already in 2 weeks, I feel like, well, because I'm recording the segments, I'm getting to know more depth, you know, of each person. And it really didn't take a whole lot of time in my schedule to do that. And if we think about it, asking, in fact, this might be our sustainable action, because we always like to put forth something that people might be willing to do after these webinars. Are you willing to take 30 minutes a week to get to know somebody new? 30 minutes a week. I mean, I've met more people than that in the last 2 weeks, but I'm not, no, okay, hyperachiever, but that's okay. Are you willing to connect with somebody new? Somebody, it's not to fix or to save or to problem solve, but to get to know somebody. So those of you who are listening on Facebook or in the webinar here yourselves, would you consider taking 30 minutes to reach out to someone who could just use a nice hello, how are you? And find out what's going on for them. Just connect. Because that's the key. And listen to that. Yeah, listen.
Listen with an open heart.
With compassion, for understanding. Not to problem solve, not to fix, not to defend. Just find out where the person is. How are they? You know, it may feel like sometimes the phone is 1,000 pounds, you know. It may feel like you got to really get ready because maybe that person won't respect that 30 minutes. But just say it from the get-go. Create some healthy boundaries. I have 30 minutes and I really would like to spend that 30 minutes with you. I mean, that can just be such a game changer for some people.
And a phone call is wonderful. No text messaging, maybe text message to make that appointment.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So you mentioned, Michelle, that you had some hope, and I wondered if the three of you would like to share any hope that you have before we close out. And then we have some announcements for the attendees, so we want to just make sure we give you all that opportunity to share anything else you might have. And I don't know, Gloria, if you want to go first, or you're going to wait and listen. She's like, no.
Well, I guess I'll start as always. I feel hopeful of the changes this even starting right here. You know, right here with me. You know, I'm gonna share that the one thing or that really brought me into wanting to become a belong facilitator or even being involved with belonging is because I went to a conference and it was a belong conference. Within that conference, that's when we started just, you know, because that's a piece of organizing, to get to know someone, to find out what, you know, what they're about and what makes them tick. But anyway, at the conference, I was thinking we had all types of people, all colors, all nationalities, and just every type of person. And then some of the speakers were saying things, and then I was just thinking, because my grandchildren are biracial, and how would they feel if I was prejudiced against their mom just because she's Caucasian? And sometimes I feel sorry for her to have to come to our family gatherings, because she's the only one, but how many times have we been the only one?
It's true.
So, you just think about those type of things, and how, I want my grandkids, I want my children, I want everyone really to accept people for who they are, and you can't make anybody like you, and I don't even think I would want that, but that's what, we're all diverse, and we need to accept others' diversity. The world would be boring if everybody was the same. So I'm hopeful, because I see some of that, and I'm pretty sure that we're not going to be a whole bunch of different races, because there's a lot of blended families. Races, different races come together, and eventually everything, they're gonna say what race you are, and you're not gonna see, everybody's gonna probably be black. And so, but the big thing is, like I said, we're all human beings. We all have the same color of blood. So.
Thank you for that. And Ashe, and let it be. Sign language applause.
Thank you, Michelle. Anything else, Nell or Gloria, you wanted to add?
Keep thinking about hope. It's like I don't have a choice. I have to continue hoping. I think it's the one thing that gets me through, because both of my grandchildren are biracial as well. And I had a very good father. They didn't, he taught me well about people. And my Buddhist group is very mixed as well. So I keep thinking, well, yeah, my hope is that more white people want to work on this, because I'm getting tired. And I know that brings up feelings for them. But I mean, not everyone is going to want to do this. But like you said, Nell, it's also institutionalized. And this country was built upon the oppression of people who helped build this country. And it's still going on. So I have no choice but to try and stay hopeful.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what gives me hope is a moral fusion movement for justice across a broad spectrum of issues, geography, kinds of people, issues, ideas, like a huge conglomeration, because that's where the power is. It's when we come together, like Faith in Action and Poor People's Campaign and Live Free, right? That we find the common ground. The process of dividing us, that's how they stay in power. So when in this conversation, I hear people saying, there's a lot of effort put into dividing us, but people still are like, I don't know, I don't know, yeah, let me try to reach out, right? And so that work in the first Reconstruction after slavery, when people came together across all kinds of differences, during the Civil Rights Movement, all different kinds of people, right? Same thing. That's what we're building right now, right now. So Faith in Action East Bay is calling us into community around civic engagement. What are the issues we want to press on? Who are the politicians that we want to get rid of? And even the ones that we might want to replace them with still require us to be on the phone when phones used to look like this, whatever they look like now. Okay. Okay. And in the email and on Twitter, I'm learning it, from Indivisible. I'm going to learn about Twitter amplification. I didn't even know there was a thing, right? But there's Indivisible, they have that. So I began to think that revolution is stone soup. Do you know that story about stone soup?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that story so much because nobody had what they needed to make soup, but everybody had what they needed to make soup for everybody. That's where we are.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, all three of you. Just
thank you.
Yeah. And what you were saying, Gloria, yeah, I mean, more white people are going to have to get into this and it's uncomfortable. I mean, we have our levels of discomfort and you know what? We just tell ourselves Black people don't have a choice not to be uncomfortable. So when we choose to avoid the uncomfortable, we're exercising privilege. We're using our privilege. And so we have sat through books that are very painful to read. We have sat through conversations that are very painful to hear. We have sat through people correcting us, which is very, it works on the ego, but that's okay because we're taking our ego out of it. And more white people need to do this. I've teetered with my identification because as a Jewish woman, I've also been mistaken as Muslim and I've been escorted out of a restaurant. I have had humiliating things said to me, and I'm nowhere near to the level of most Black people, but I've had my own challenges as being darker skinned than she is, but not as darker skinned as you are. And yet at the same time, because I have fairer skin, I have more privilege. And so this is something that we want to invite all people of lighter skin to really think about. We can do hard things. We can. We've all done hard things. We do it all the time. And that's what makes us even more resilient, so that as a community, we can have joy together, right? We can't skirt around. We have to go through the wall. We really have to push through. Because the more we understand how to be uncomfortable, the more comfortable we can get together. But people get so scared about being uncomfortable, it stops them short. And we want to invite all of our attendees, all of the people watching on Facebook, all of the people watching on YouTube, get uncomfortable. It won't last as long as you think it will. But you're going to make a huge difference if you're willing to get uncomfortable. Your final words?
Yeah, I think I'll bring it back to you because we are on National Women's History Month. So I will bring us back there just a little and say thank you so much, Michelle, Gloria, and Nell. Just beautiful, strong women here with us today. And I think it's real important for all of us to keep in mind, Black women have been at the forefront of so many movements. And have made, a difference in many movements regarding, the women's movement got it wrong, and it was Black women's voices that were like, no, you're getting it wrong. You're not including everyone that needs to be included. You're not hearing all voices, and we're not going to do well in this movement. And there's a lot of things that didn't go well in the movement because of that. You just look at it's so many movements that Black women have been at the forefront of it. Even Nell talking about your mom was like getting those jobs, right? And the strength and just courage. I just want to really honor the strength and courage of the three of you that are here with us tonight, and the strength and courage of all people, but particularly Black women and Indigenous women and women of color.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And a reminder to everyone,
Thank you.
please make your donations to
Yes.
Faith in Action East Bay, for the Belong Circle, for the Poor People's Campaign,
And live free. Live free.
Live Free, and start reading the resources we sent. And
And talk to someone when
Talk
you
with
do.
them.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Don't do it in isolation. You need to be able to bounce stuff that comes up with someone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
You know, it's not going to go very far when you're all alone.
Well, that was, yes, great final statement. We don't do this alone.
Such an honor to have been in space with the three of you.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mhm.
Mwah.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great night, everybody.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.